the development of the first created being. How was it done by the light? So we've already learned a little with you. I've spoken about it. The light creates the desire to derive pleasure from it, which is the future created being. And it is called the will to receive. This desire is exactly equivalent to the light. The light is called pleasure, and the will to receive, the desire for pleasure, are equal. This is equal that. The light, or creator, and desire is the future created being. I don't want to call it a created being yet, because the created being is something that later still needs to undergo many phases of development from it. When this desire is filled with light, with pleasure, it feels itself full and content. Hence, creation could have ended there. Rather, within this desire, within this light, within the pleasure that the created being reveals within itself, it begins to feel the giver of the pleasure, the creator. Not pleasure, but the one who's giving it. Then, at the end, it begins to feel that there is one giving to it and giving it pleasure. Two things which lead it to respond. It also wants to be like the giver of the pleasure, for the giver of the pleasure is on a more complete level and state than it is. So we find that the same will to receive suddenly wants to be a will to give, like the Creator giving the pleasure. It only has a desire to give. Just like we also have such a response when I feel that someone is giving to me and I'm receiving. When he gives me pleasure, I have a response within my desire, shame, a feeling that I'd like to reciprocate him. This is what happens here. Meaning, the development of the created being, the next development, is the desire to give. But what can it give? It has nothing to give. Yet, it understands that if it wants to give, it already prepares itself. So, what do I give? I have nothing. I want to give pleasure. What kind of pleasure does the Creator have? The moment it wants to give, it begins to feel that it has nothing to give. Still, what can it do? If it receives from the Creator, it will thus give him pleasure. It's like a child. If he receives from his mother, since his mother loves him, he knows that he can thus bring her pleasure, so he gives her pleasure by that. We see how that same desire develops by feeling the Creator. So, here there is a desire to give, and in order to give, what does it say? I'm using the will to receive. There are two desires here. Using the will to receive in order to give. When it reaches such a state, then another state develops within it. In this state, it begins to feel that it's like the Creator. It also reciprocates the pleasure, giving it in return. Hence, it feels itself in the state of the Creator. When it feels the state of the Creator, it wants to be in the same place. It wants to be in His place. It wants to enjoy His stature. Not to be just similar to Him, where I receive and thus I will give you pleasure. Rather, that same desire develops to the greatest degree. I want to be in His place. Then it wants to derive pleasure, both from receiving pleasure from the Creator and from desiring to be in His place. From both aspects, what it can absorb from His stature. This desire is a complete desire. It's a desire within which the created being feels itself, its selfhood. Therefore, this desire is the final desire.